Shabbat shalom. I'm ready, yes. Okay. Hey. Yes, Rick is right there with the tie. The tie. Rick, raise your hand. That's your reading. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. Welcome, everybody. We are, well, actually, let's start with your announcement. That's a good thing to do.
Oh, yes, I have an announcement. I'm happy to be here.
That's the announcement?
The reason I'm toasting, too, is because this month I am celebrating 1 year here at CHJ.
Oh, my God. Wow.
1 year.
Wowee. Mazel tov. But that's not the announcement.
That is the announcement.
That was the announcement? You should have told me.
Yes,
I would have said it.
And, okay, well, you're probably going to mention the other thing, too.
Okay.
Well, so our wonderful program committee, consisting of many people from the former Vivace Music Committee, are really excited about our next concert, which is going to be October 1st. It's right on the heels of our high holidays. So, you know, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, after Yom Kippur, we're having this concert. It's going to be Sunday, October 1. Please write that in your calendar.
It's actually during Sukkot.
It's a Sunday.
It's during Sukkot, which is another holiday.
Perfect.
The entire month is filled with holidays.
Perfect. So it's going to be...
It's here.
The 1st of October, Sunday, 2 o'clock. Going to have another wonderful cellist and violinist. And they're going to be the same people who will be playing for all the high holiday services. So you'll get a chance to hear them at the high holiday services.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mazel Tov on 1 year. It has been a lot of fun working with you. I hope you all, you see the shtick that we have going back and forth is because we're friends and we like each other. And that's one of the coolest things. And then I get things like that. Next week, State Senator Jeremy Moss is joining us with an update from Lansing. He is, as you probably know, not only a state senator, he is the president pro tempore of the Senate, so he'll be here to talk to us about what's been going on legislatively, hopefully also touching on the issue that we'll be discussing tonight. On August 11th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, there's no Shabbat service. Instead, we're having dinner over a movie. Now, I wish I could tell you we were going to be watching some spectacular, but we're going to be watching a movie called The Settlers. The Settlers is a must-see movie. The Settlers is an intimate look at the life of West Bank, folks, an intimate look at the life of West Bank settlers, so we can understand this settlement movement, these ultra-nationalist, Zionist, religious Zionists, who have now essentially taken over the country, and we've learned now that their agenda was much larger than we had thought. So I hope you'll come. We'll be serving just a light pizza and salad dinner in here, and we'll watch the movie on the big screen. And time allowing, we'll talk about it afterwards for at least a little bit. And then finally, on August 18th, we have a bar mitzvah, the bar mitzvah of Elise Levy. Many of you know Alan, who's on our board and the chair of our membership campaign, our membership development committee. And his daughter, he and his wife Libby, will be celebrating Elise's bat mitzvah. And she's going to be talking about how to engage humanistic values to address climate change denialism. So it's a big topic, a very big topic, and I'm very excited that she elected to do that for us. And then finally, just a few more notes. August 3rd at noon, the film group, which is part of the program committee, will be talking about Oppenheimer. So I know, how many of you have seen it? Just curious. A lot of you. So come at noon. Come at noon. I don't know if he's doing the mashup with Barbie. Although I've heard that there are places, my daughter's told me there are places where the themes of power and so forth collide, or maybe meet. We also have a Musar Cafe that same day, so you can make a double header of it. You can come for the Musar Cafe. The topic is enthusiasm. And then right after, you can stay for the second part of the double header to hear from, yourselves talking about it. And Fran Shore will be facilitating that. All right, without any further ado, our guests we'll hear from in just a few moments after we finish our short service. But our readers tonight that I would like to thank are Jean Clarich, Beth DeZoden-Fuchs, Audrey Pleasant, Rick Grauer, Sheila Glass, Natan Fuchs, and Lonnie Fleischer. And we'll begin, Arthur, if you will. Oh, you already did. The first slide. As these Shabbat candles that we are about to light give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness remind us of the generations who have sparked light, so may we in our own day be among those who spark light. I'd like to invite Elaine Fieldman and John Knafla, to light our Shabbat candles tonight.
Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor ba'shalom, ba'shalom, Baruch haor, Baruch haor, SHABBAT.
May these moments of Shabbat rest, renewal, and contemplation inspire us, open our hearts and minds to inspiring and comforting each other. May all who struggle find rest. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing.
May all who
despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may every one of us be inspired to fulfill its promise.
Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, nikadma b'shalom. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, nikadma b'shalom. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, nikadma b'shalom. Naria, naria, leyom simchatenu, b'zmirot naria lo. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat. Lechuneranena, lechuneranena, lechuneranena la Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. As we welcome Shabbat, let us look to this moment in time to once again gain perspective on where we have been and where we are going. On this Shabbat, may we find the space to consider and to challenge. May we find the courage to do what is right.
Together, let us find meaning,
Calm our anxieties, understand our purpose, and appreciate our accomplishments. Let us find the strength to continue working for ourselves and others.
Let us share the burdens and blessings of responsibilities.
Let us locate the will to change the things we can no longer accept.
Let us do
All of this and more, mindful that we are a community of humanistic believers, unbroken and unbowed, prepared to face all that life has in store for us. Let us strive to feel these bonds of belief and community when we are together and when we are apart.
Let us rejoice in our ties. Let us rejoice in our collective power.
Let us rejoice in the gift of gathering as a community on this Shabbat.
May we strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. These words we inscribe in our innermost being, aspiring to practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words, and especially through our deeds, so that the next generation may learn to revere and celebrate life.
Shabbat Shalom. The transforming power of love, the redeeming power of compassion, the healing power of forgiveness, these endure in every age. The joy which comes from sharing, the strength which comes from striving, the nourishment which comes from nature, these endure in every age. The sanctity of life, the value of truth, the primacy of justice, These endure in every age. Amidst never-ending change, may we have the wisdom to identify and embrace what matters in all times.
נפתח לנו שערי צדק, חן וחסד ברחמים. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, חן וחסד ברחמים. זה
When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then goodness encompasses our lives, and we can begin to change the world.
Shabbat Shalom.
Don't merely expect to find or to believe that life is worthwhile. Make it worthwhile. Don't merely see life whole, make it whole. Not knowing which should come first, to improve oneself or to improve the world, we end up doing neither. Actually, the only way to improve the world is by improving oneself, and the only way to improve oneself is by improving the world.
Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor, velo ata ben chori levatel mimena, velo ata ben chori, velo ata ben chori levatel mimena, velo ata ben chori. Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor.
Shabbat Shalom. Sing the song of people joined in understanding and respect, the song of life's wonders, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Na'aseh shalom, shalom ba'olam. Na'aseh shalom aleinu ve'akol ha'olam ve'imru shalom. Na'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru shalom. Na'aseh shalom, shalom ba'olam. Na'aseh shalom aleinu ve'akol ha'olam ve'imru shalom.
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, our well wishes are extended to these members of our community and to their loved ones, to Nitzan Ben-Gal, Ruthie Goldman, Ruth Moltz, Mary Monahan, who's here with us tonight, Rabbi Peter Schweitzer, and Jim Walker. If you're thinking of someone tonight whose name you'd like to mention, who's ill or in need of comfort. Joseph Barclay. Thank you. Anybody on this side over here? Yes, Tom? Joe Brown. Thank you. Anybody that we missed? In a few moments, we're going to remember the 4 people also who died in the Oxford High School shooting. At this time, I want to also extend our well wishes to all of those who were injured, both physically and emotionally, to wish them and their loved ones the fullest measure of recovery that is possible. May all who suffer know that they are not alone, that we are there. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits.
Makom ha'koach so deep within us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Shalom. Mekom hagoat betocheinu, mekorot abracha mitemroteinu. Make those in need of healing no refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Shalom.
At times of loss, we search our hearts for the perfect words to give form to our feelings, make the thing complete, set the matter at rest. But in hours of searching, each piece lies rejected, too precise, too difficult, too harsh, not relevant, implying what we do not wish. But look into the gray, wide sky, and the thoughts will come like this. Remember me when I loved you most, and you loved me most. Remember me when I was my bravest and when I did you right. Then let that be our secret bond. And just once, let us rise in the morning and enjoy the light and know that that bird in the mist is returning to the sun. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us. Our own loved ones our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost. The martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. You can see I'm emotional right now. Tonight, we remember these members of our community and their loved ones on this, their yard site, the anniversary of their deaths. Bruce Bonet, Jack Events, Shirley Ginsburg, Enid Grauer, David Krieger, Rena Mann, Edna Scala, and Greta Welthal. To this list of yard sites, we add the names of these beloved people who were taken in the horrible shooting at Oxford High School: Tate Meyer, Madison Baldwin, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. And if there's someone whom you're remembering tonight whose name you'd like to share with the community as we go around. Anybody on this side? Yes, Tom? Mike Boutsman. Anybody that we missed? We say in our tradition, yes? Go ahead, Joseph, I'm sorry.
All those who have been the victim of needless gun violence.
We say in our tradition, Yehi zichram livracha. May their memories be a blessing. By this we mean that as we suffer their loss and go through life in their absence, we hope that pleasant memories and wonderful times, things that we've learned, things that we shared, will be our constant companion and bring them back to us, if not in being, in memory. If you can do so comfortably, please rise now as together we recite our humanistic interpretation of Kaddish. Nit gadal v'nit kadash beruach ha'adam. Let us dignify and ennoble all people in the spirit of our shared humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind. May justice and peace permeate and comfort all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. Please be seated. Well, I am very, very grateful to our visitors tonight for coming to speak about this topic. It's obviously a very emotional and very painful one, but one that I think and I hope that some of the pain is ameliorated by the great good work that you do. Just a few words about their organization. It's called No Future Without Today, and they'll be speaking in much more depth about it, but it was organized by survivors of the shooting at Oxford High School, which took place, of course, on the 30th of November in 2021. In response to the lack of sensible firearm safety measures and mental health care resources, No Future Without Today is a group determined to advocate for the changes that we so desperately need, so that communities don't have to endure the pain and suffering that follows gun violence. No Future Without Today is part of End Gun Violence Michigan. This is a statewide coalition that has brought together key organizations working on the issues of gun violence prevention throughout our state, advocating gun violence legislation, and developing a united strategy to overcome the power of the gun lobby. We are blessed by the presence of 4 people tonight, and I'm just going to introduce you from here, but if you want to, come on up as I do. And I don't know if this is the order, but this is the order that I had from the conversations I had. Well, actually from the website more than anything. You guys can come up here. So Dylan Morris, as you can tell, is the young man among our group. He is the executive director, if you can believe it, of this important group, this movement to remind state and federal authorities, legislators, that today's youth will not remain complacent, he writes, as they demand multifaceted changes, starting with sensible gun reforms and the expansion of mental health care access. He is a survivor of the Oxford High School shooting. Jada Knight, Jada, is 18 years old and serves as the digital director of No Future Without Today. She's determined that we not remain numb to the reality of grieving traumatized children or being terrified every time we go into a public space. She's part of this group because she believes that everyone deserves to live in a world free of gun violence and deserves a future. Brooklyn Ramey is a junior at Bloomfield Hills High School. She writes on the website that she is deeply and passionately committed to making changes through gun reform, and that's why she's chosen to devote so much of her time to this amazing organization. And finally, Lauren Jasinski, who, like Dylan, survived the Oxford High School shooting while working there as a member of the faculty, has been a public school educator for 10 years, teaching U.S. history, world history, U.S. civics, and AP comparative politics and government. In November 2022, she ran for and was elected to the Royal Oak Schools Board of Education, and she currently is the Civics Education Specialist at the Levin Center of Wayne State University. So please join me in welcoming them, and I'm going to turn the program over. So just very briefly, when we get to questions, the mic that we use for the people that don't want to go up the stairs, that's also the mic to line up at in order to ask your questions. So I'm not going to call on anyone. I'll just say when the time has come. So we're starting with you, Dylan? Yep. Great, awesome. Come on up.
Thank you so much for having us, everybody. It's great to be here. It's been a very difficult day. I'm sure you all know about the Miller hearing that took place today to see if the shooter can receive life without parole. It's been a really difficult day for the Oxford community and the brave people who got up to testify today in court. So I want to start with a moment of silence for the 4 victims and their families before we begin. So. Thank you. I was in the school on the day of November 30th when a shooting occurred. I was on my way to my 5th hour IB English class where we were to begin reading a short story. Like any other day, I think we were going to discuss it that day too. So we were going to do our everyday school activity, but instead we barred the door shut. We were armed with makeshift weapons, including scissors, tape dispensers, and a hockey stick, anything we could find at the moment, ready to defend ourselves if anyone came through our door. I remember a student coming in behind me. I was one of the last students to file into my class. Oh, yeah. I was one of the last students to file into my class, and I remember my classmate rushing in behind me saying that shots have been fired and that people need help. And so I remember my teacher dialing either 911 or the office, and the look on her face of complete terror. I will never forget that. So we barred the door shut, and we sat there for 45 minutes, wondering if we will survive what took place at our school. And so after 45 minutes of not knowing, I'll remind you, we all had our eyes on the doorknob. A federal agent came to retrieve us from our room with one clear instruction as we went down the hallway, not to look to the right. So like my classmates, I kept my eyes straight in front of me, my hands up, and put my backpack right next to the scattered belongings already in the hallway, and made the long, surreal walk to our local Meyer Supercenter, where we were to begin reunited with our families that day. I will never forget it, and the events of today really brought that up for us. And so I want to say it's such an honor to be here with you today, because we like to turn our pain into purpose, and that's a healing experience for us. So it's really great to be here. And so in the aftermath of the shooting, I didn't know what to do. I was wrestling with my thoughts and actions, questioning how this could happen at any school, let alone mine. And so I was politically active before the shooting in Democratic politics in the state, but the shooting had really galvanized my resolve to specifically advocate for gun violence prevention policies. And when the shooting in Uvalde, Texas happened in May of 2022, I remember calling Ms. Jasinski saying that we can't wait. We have to do something. We cannot let this be a reality. And so with that, after many long late-night Zoom calls and even preparation during class, we started our 501c4 No Future Without Today. We basically believe that gun violence is nuanced. It isn't just a gun issue. It isn't just a mental health issue. It's we like to take a multifaceted approach to curbing gun violence. And so we've been doing a lot of work over the past year and a half. And Jada's going to talk to you a little bit about that. But it's so great to be here, and I'm excited to answer some of the questions that you may have.
Hi everyone, I'm Jada. I want to echo my appreciation for having us here to speak. This is a really important issue, and I also really appreciate you uplifting youth voices, and specifically uplifting survivors' voices, because we need to center those most impacted always. So like Dylan said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've done so far, because over the past year and a half, it's been a whirlwind. It's been really busy, all while we've been juggling high school as well. So we started off as an organization. Actually, before I joined the organization, we started off with a 600-person strong march through Oxford shortly after the shooting in Uvalde, Texas. So our community and people from across the state joined us, as well as March for Our Lives, to honor those we lost, as well as demand action from our state legislature. And that was in June 2022. And then since then, we have been lobbying with legislators in Lansing. We took a trip in DC to stand in solidarity with other gun violence prevention groups and other survivors from across the country to demand a ban on assault weapons at the federal level. And then we have also, one of the core parts of our organization is education and community engagement. And so we have done a lot of similar opportunities like this one, where we engage members of our community, members of communities across the state, in just conversations like this at various Democratic clubs and various opportunities wherever we are invited. So we really like to stress the importance of conversations and the importance of just talking about this issue, because it's an issue that people don't like talking about, right? It's really hard to talk about, but the less we talk about, the more it continues to happen, because it allows our legislatures to continue doing nothing about it. We need to be loud. And that starts with our communities, that starts with having conversations with one another. And then we have taken that to the legislative level at the state and federal level. So like I said, we've lobbied and we've met with members of Congress, and we've met with members of our state Senate and state House. Especially after the Michigan State shooting, we were in Lansing practically multiple times a week, all while juggling high school, especially Dylan. Dylan was committed and was in Lansing, I don't know, constantly. Yeah. And on top of that, we have also engaged at the community level in a gun buyback program with the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. We did voter registration drives in the month of October and November of last year, and we have tried to engage students as well. We hosted a press conference, all with students from across the state. We've just worked really hard to also stand in solidarity with other survivors and other organizations. So we've worked with organizations like Sit Down MSU, March for Our Lives, Change the Ref, March 4th, really to show a united front, because this is an issue that the majority of Americans care about, and the majority of Americans support common sense gun legislation and increased and expanded mental health care. And we need to be loud and stand together so our legislatures can't ignore us. And on top of the work that we have done, we have made significant progress at the Michigan level, at the state level. And so Ms. Jasinski is going to tell you a little bit about that progress. And we couldn't do that without the coalition and Gun Violence Michigan that we joined last year. And so she's also going to tell you a little bit about that. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but we don't stop fighting. And truly, being a high school activist is really interesting, because while you are in class, you are simultaneously writing emails to legislators, asking for meetings and asking for permits to host protests. And we have also recently, in June of this year, we hosted our second annual March with Oxford, where we stood in solidarity with a bunch of other gun violence prevention groups and Gun Violence Michigan to have a statewide demonstration to silence the violence and end gun violence in Michigan. So I will hand it off to Ms. Jasinski.
Hi, everyone. Like my other wonderful board members have said, we're just so honored to be here and thankful to share this evening with you. Like Dylan said, it's been a very, very difficult few days for people within the Oxford community and truly across the state. And that's one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about tonight. So my name's Lauren Jasinski. You'll hear the kids call me Miss J a lot. Feel free to call me Lauren. But I'm a board member with No Future Without Today. And I was invited on to help these wonderful young people really make this happen. We are an official 501c4, like Dylan said. We're not a school club. I'm not their teacher advisor. I'm a board member just like they are. And it's been really, really important for us to do this work together. Dylan mentioned that we had formed this organization in January following the shooting in Oxford, but then did realize that along with the healing that we needed to do, both as individuals and the return to the building and things like that, the responsibility got a little bit heavy. And then when the shooting occurred in Uvalde, and we were faced within 6 months of the own tragedy in our own building, with the overwhelming news coverage and stories about more and more young people across our country needing to deal with futures that were now out of their control, we knew that we had to step up and make this a bigger action. Like the rabbi said when he introduced me, I do consider myself a survivor of the Oxford High School shooting. I've been a teacher in Oxford for the last 10 years. I taught mostly world history and US civics, so there is a reason that this is the work that I'm called to and motivated to do along with my students. I was just preparing for my 5th hour class when the shooting started, which occurred nearly directly outside of my classroom door. I was locked down for just about 3 hours with 29 ninth grade students who were just getting settled. The shooting occurred during a passing time in between courses, so there was a lot of students unaccounted for. The hallways were busy, and we were between classes. And Dylan and I don't share our stories with you to pile on any kind of additional trauma. We're not trying to share things with you that are going to cause you harm, because that's the opposite of our intention. But we do want to make sure that we're always putting faces to some of these stories, especially after something like the Miller hearing over these last 2 days. There's so many statistics and facts and information being kind of overloaded. And I think one of the things that's important is that while we do miss our friends deeply who lost their lives, and worry about the people with physical injuries, this event did create thousands of gun violence survivors in a matter of a few minutes. And the ways that that impacts our lives and the ways that that's going to cause us to live our lives moving forward is very, very traumatic and very, very different and difficult for us to deal with. So one of the things that we like to say as an organization is that we honor with action, that's one of the things that we've stepped forward to do, and that out of our pain is going to come some purpose. One of the most important things that we've done, along with all of these incredible events and opportunities to speak with people, is to become involved with a statewide coalition called End Gun Violence Michigan. End Gun Violence Michigan is a coalition of over 40 gun violence prevention organizations across the state. They're kind of the usual suspects in terms of gun violence prevention, like Everytown, Moms Demand Action, Giffords Gun Owners for Safety, a lot of the names that you hear in the news who've been doing this work for decades. But we're also joined by a lot of faith organizations. We were originally kind of built up and started by the Episcopalian Diocese, but we have faith organizations across the state from all different denominations. We also have a lot of community organizations who have joined us, who are not expressly, who their work originally was not expressly in gun violence prevention, but it's people who see the ways that this is rapidly impacting every single bit of the work that they do. So groups like Oakland Forward, LGBT Detroit, I'm, of course, not able to rattle through all the acronyms right now in my mind. These groups that are not, that gun violence prevention isn't expressly in their purpose, but they're finding the ways that this is hurting their members, holding back their community, causing trauma. And the number one thing about gun violence is that it's 100% preventable. And we can't say that about too many other crises in our world right now, right? That there are so many things out of our control, and this is something that we can solve and that we can end, but it's going to take a really concerted effort to do so. And that's one of the reasons that this coalition building is so important, because as we began to see that there was going to be movement on this issue in the state, we started realizing that legislators don't like it when you plan 40 different meetings to talk about the same issues, and when 40 different people are asking them 40 slightly different asks, things get really complicated. And we knew that we couldn't lose this issue, lose the importance of this issue just due to unorganization, right, or being disorganized. And so this coalition has really allowed us to operate with a single voice in Lansing, and really advocate for some of the things that were priorities for voters going into last year's election. The way that these issues polled was over 86% approval for the things that we asked for universal background checks, for safe storage laws. Universal background checks alone pulled at over 92% approval for voters before the last election. It wasn't once people had won. It wasn't once there wasn't anything on the line. It was before last November's election. And that's really saying something. There is not much in our culture right now that we agree about, 92%. And it's really significant that people see this as an issue, see this as a winning issue in elections, and we as constituents need to remind our elected officials to do so. The legislation that we've been working on over the last year and a half, that was finally passed in April and March, yeah, thanks. Were truly universal background checks. That was a actually very minor amendment to a current Michigan law that made it so that the sale of all firearms in our state had to go through a federal background check before they were able to be purchased. Yes. The second piece of legislation that was passed that is incredibly important to our community in Oxford was safe storage. This was a law making it criminal to store a gun in an unsecure way if there were minors that it would be accessible to in a home or in a dwelling. So what this means is that if you are a legal gun owner, it doesn't change any of that. But what it does is ask that if that gun would be accessible to a minor at any time that gun is unsecured by the person that owns it, it needs to be locked up responsibly. It needs to be stored separate from ammunition. It needs to be stored separate from ammunition. It needs to be in either a gun lock or a gun safe, and that needs to only be accessible by the person that actually owns that firearm. The third, probably most complicated of the laws are called extreme risk protection orders. Sometimes those are called red flag laws, a lot in the news. Sometimes they're also called ERPOs by those in the know. Extreme risk protection orders are laws that are going to make it so that law enforcement can red flag laws make it so that law enforcement can remove a firearm from someone that could potentially be a danger to themselves or others. So this means that if you have a loved one who you know owns a gun, and they do so legally and responsibly most of the time, but they could be going through some type of crisis, they could be going through some kind of major life change, they could be in distress of some kind, and you know that it's dangerous for that person to own a firearm, you can enact one of these red flag laws. It will be investigated within 24 hours, and that firearm will be removed from that person for a full year. And so this is a really, really important step for us to take, because although we're really, really focused on making schools safer for people, right? As an educator, I am always going to advocate for schools being places of learning and places of joy and not places of harm. But school shootings are a minor part of overall gun violence in our country. Last year, over 44,000 people lost their lives to gun violence, 4% of which is from mass shootings. The rest of that number comes from suicides, accidental deaths, community violence. And so the work that we're doing in coalition with these other organizations is really moving us forward and being able to be knowledgeable and influential in all of the ways that gun violence is going to affect people, because as a country, this is a unique problem here in the United States, and we want to make sure that we aren't creating generations more people that are dealing with the things that we currently are. Although I do want to acknowledge too that as Jada and Brooklyn have joined us in the incredible work that they've put forward to our organization, it's really, really important to have the voices of people that don't consider themselves survivors along in this fight, because we have to prove to people in our state and across our country that this is an issue that affects everybody. You shouldn't have to wait until it comes to your door to say that this is something that you care about. And having these voices of survivors alongside everyday community members, as well as young people right now, because the way that we force young people to participate in drills, go through threat assessments, talk about gun violence on a daily basis when they should be learning, when they should be expanding their minds, when they should be making their lives better, it is really, really concerning. And so although they weren't at the school with us that day, I do want to acknowledge the fact that young people right now and people in education settings are very, very much impacted by this threat, this constant threat. So that being said, right, I'm not trying to be so doom and gloom up here, right? We're doing these things because we feel so passionately about them. And so I want to introduce Brooklyn to tell you a little bit about some of the ways that you can be involved, some of the actions that you can take to join us, and then we'd be happy to take questions. Okay, Brooklyn.
Hi everyone, I'm Brooklyn. I'd also like to say thank you. I know all the board members and I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's not something we take lightly. Really, truly appreciate that you guys have let us come here and talk to you guys about our work, and then also about what you can do to get involved. So that's what I'll be talking about, like Ms. J said. One of the first things we always tell people is to contact your representatives. Even though we had a lot of great common sense gun laws passed this year, there's still so much work to be done between mental health, assault weapons bans, and raising the minimum age to buy a gun. So if you're passionate about those things, definitely reach out to your representatives. And then in addition to that, all representatives have coffee hours. So we really encourage you guys to try and find out where they are, what time they are, so you can go talk to your representatives yourself. It's really great to be able to see them face to face and really voice your opinions and things that you want to change. And it can be really meaningful. To find that, you can probably find it on their social media if they have it, or their website. A lot of representatives have it, and they'll probably be published there. The second thing we want to say is you can follow us on all of our social media and End Gun Violence Michigan. We have a Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and we always post and keep updated on things that we're doing, just new statistics that came out or things that have been happening around our state, so that everyone is informed. And then in all of our bios, we have our website, which is nofuturewithouttoday.org. And on there, you can find more information about the other board members who are not with us today. You can find out more information about our organization as a whole. We have donations accepted through there and contact pages. But most importantly, we have a newsletter that you can sign up for that is written by one of the board members, and that really can help you stay in the know on what we're doing at End Gun Violence Michigan and any other gun violence prevention organization that is in Michigan and around the country. So with that, I think we can take questions, and thank you all so much for having us.
Okay, I guess this is more of a, maybe more of a comment. I'm just so thrilled that you are here. I can't tell you how thrilled I am. I was on the other side of not a similar situation, but I was a school social worker in Rochester, just next door to you all, for 23 years. And in I think it was a 3-year period, we had 4 student deaths. 3 were by handguns, and they were all parents' handguns. One was, and again, I don't want to pile on either, but one was, I was on the crisis intervention team, which meant that when there was a trauma in any building in the district, that's where we went, social workers and psychologists. And I mean, it was just traumatic for me, personally, professionally. It was traumatic to go to the school, go to the schools where these events, the students were, and to have to provide services. We had to debrief ourselves. We went through crisis intervention training. Anyway, that really motivated me to get involved with stuff like what you all are doing. And I've done some volunteer work with Moms Demand Action, so it's fantastic that you're, partnering with them and all these other groups. And I'm really thrilled because for a long time, I was going to my Michigan state legislators who were Republicans, and I was just met with incredible hostility. I'm talking about hostility when I would say, look, I've got some interventions that could actually be effective, okay? And I ticked them off like a dozen of them, and Ryan Berman, who was my Michigan state rep, he just rejected every single one and basically tried to grind me down like I was a hostile witness or something. So, and now we have Noah Arbit, who's in his place, and Noah is just awesome. So I'm just thrilled that you guys are doing this. And yeah, and I did do a presentation. I presented for Moms Demand Action to the Rochester Social Work Department. I said, look, I'd like to present to the whole, I'd like to present to your board. It's safe storage. We're not saying we're not going to take away your guns, et cetera, et cetera. There was resistance there because actually the superintendent's adult son completed suicide also. So anyway, I don't want to dominate, but I'm just so thrilled that you're taking this up, and I don't feel like I'm alone in this whole thing, because everybody thinks it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen here, and it does. It happens everywhere. So, but I do want to ask you. You're talking about gun buyback programs. What does the research say about those in terms of efficacy and outcomes and so forth?
Do you take that? Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So for those of you who might be unaware, there's an ability for police departments to do something called a gun buyback, where they can kind of open their doors for a set amount of time and offer they're not allowed to hand out cash. They're usually like Visa gift cards or some kind of food gift cards, right? In exchange for turning in a weapon. No questions asked, no background check run, no information about the gun has to be turned over, but it's just a way for police departments to accept those unwanted firearms for any reason. Oakland County participated there were 9 communities across Oakland County who participated in a gun buyback beginning of October last year. And people were skeptical, and like you said, talking about being met with resistance, those were the only 9 police departments in the entire county. We asked every single one of them, we asked all of Oakland County to participate. Those 9 said yes. And said that they were willing to put their names behind it and willing to put the effort and manpower behind it. Because a big thing is the efficacy, like you said. So one of the struggles with gun violence prevention statistics is that you can't prove something that didn't happen, right? We can't, if we are the most effective, we're not going to know how many suicides, crimes, or episodes of violence that we prevent, right? So that's just something that we have to deal with. That being said, I think the proof is kind of in the success of those events. Those events were slated for like a 4-hour time window on, I think, a Saturday afternoon. Each location had several $1,000s worth of gift cards to give away to gun owners, and they kind of thought like, okay, we'll get through those, we'll do a couple hours, we'll see how it is, and then reevaluate. Every single location across Oakland County ran out of gift cards in the first 45 minutes of those events, and people continued to turn in guns with no cash being given back to them. That they just said, these are in my house, I don't want them, I have no need for them, and we want you to deal with them. So I think that in and of itself proves that the need is out there. An actual number of like crimes that it's stopping is obviously more difficult.
Right. So what were the objections by the other police departments?
I think that there were I think that there were groups of people, groups of gun owners that feel very, very concerned about gun violence prevention work impeding on their ability to legally own guns, and by that they viewed it as a first step in some way. Yep, a first step in some ways of law enforcement wanting to take guns, but it was a completely voluntary program, and we recovered hundreds of guns across the county. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. I have another question. Wouldn't you like to sit down? Excuse me.
Us?
Wouldn't you like to sit down?
Oh, I think we got some nervous energy up here.
Yeah, we're
We're good.
You can sit here too.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it, but no, we're great. Okay, great.
Maybe they want to sit down.
Thank you. Yeah, Dylan, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, adding on to the point that you can't measure what doesn't happen, I would like to add that the federal government does not do any research on gun violence. A lot of the work that you see being done right now is from community organizations such as Everytown, Giffords, Brady, Law Center. So they study these statistics, but the federal government can't do any research on this. It's barred by the gun lobby and Republicans who may not be, for research on this issue. And so actually in March, I went to Washington to introduce a bill with Representative Alyssa Slotkin and Senator Ed Markey called the Gun Violence Prevention Research Bill, which basically allows the CDC to do research on gun violence as a public health crisis. See what's working, what's not working, the actual statistics and data that we are missing, and also how we can improve. And so that was something that I took joy in doing, and it was really empowering. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add that point onto that we don't really have statistics that we should have.
Right, but if you're collecting guns.
Mark, we gotta move on to other people. It can't be a dialogue all night.
We'll chat.
All right. I have a question. As you know, many of the strongest opponents of the measures that you mentioned and other gun safety measures. Oh, okay. Can everybody hear me better? Okay. As you know, some of the strongest opponents of gun safety and other anti-gun violence measures tout mental health as an alternative to gun regulation. And notice I'm using the term gun regulation, not gun control. I've always believed the term gun control plays into the hands of our opponents, okay? But anyway, getting back to my question, what kinds of mental health treatment, therapies, responses, whatever, do you believe are effective in these situations, and what kinds do you advocate?
For sure. So we've focused a lot on gun safety laws in the recent past, but we're working on our mental health care priorities right now. But I can say that we're really pushing for social emotional learning in schools to make sure that kids that may not be getting support at home are getting it at school. To make sure that they're not falling through the cracks in the case of the Oxford shooter that took place. And so we want to make sure that people are getting the help that they need. Also, incentivizing mental health care, incentivizing people who want to go into the mental health care profession to go into that because tuition costs and it's expensive to go to school. So we want to make sure that people can go into that profession and truly make an impact because we are facing a mental health care crisis right now. We don't have enough mental health care professionals.
My name is Michael Ross. I was a juvenile probation officer in Wayne County for 32 years, and a lot of that time was spent in Detroit. And I'll just give you a few examples of some crazy, crazy stuff. They were playing Russian roulette with a gun, these kids, 14-year-olds, gun found by their mother's gun, and he lost, and he killed himself. That's just one. There's so many examples of guns there's so much more that you don't even hear about. It doesn't even make the papers. It was so much, and I remember some mothers went to Lansing and tried to talk about it. It wasn't even in the papers. I'm talking 10, 20 years. I remember on 9/11, or right after 9/11, there was a conference in Ann Arbor, and I saw these mothers who were anti-gun in Ann Arbor, and they seemed so helpless. Many of them had lost children, of their own children. This has been going on for so long, and so little has been done. So eventually I got a transfer to Livonia. I thought, oh, well, my days of working at the ghetto are over. So the first thing I found, not the first thing, but the thing I found out is that it's easy to get a gun in a high school in Livonia. Stevenson High School had plenty of guns available. It's so easy. It's really amazing, but it's so frustrating as a probation officer to see your kids die, or you see your kids kill people, or drive-by shootings. These kids talk about it like it's no big deal. And it happens all the time. And so I'm so glad to see you guys. I just can't tell you how pleased I am. It's just, well, that's all I got to say. Oh, I have one more question. Are these rules going to be made illegal by our Supreme Court in Washington? Because I've heard people say that the Supreme Court won't go for these things. So I would hope that's wrong.
Civics teacher again. So the timeline the short version of the timeline that we have ahead of us. These laws were passed and signed into law in April and May, yeah. In April and May of this current year. One of the things that didn't happen when they passed on the floor was a vote for what's called immediate effect, i.e. Yeah, so I'm seeing some head nods. One of the things that happens at state legislatures is that they have a choice once they pass a law that law can either take effect immediately, like the following day or the following day after the signature from the governor, or it can take effect 90 days after the close of that current session. These laws passed but didn't qualify for immediate effect. At first, we were a little bit disappointed by that because we're anxious to get these in action. But realistically, it's actually a very, very good thing because the implementation of all of these laws and the public education that has to happen and the processes and public policy that has to happen in between a good law and actual good practice in communities is a lot of work, right? So we've basically been gifted this nearly a year, nearly 12 calendar months to work on those things in our communities communities with current existing programs to advocate for good programs and most importantly, the funding that all of these programs are going to require so that they can take effect March of next year. Once that happens, there's of course always a chance that somebody could challenge it. That would be, to make it to the federal Supreme Court would be a very, very long process. And obviously people will have to get in trouble for violating these laws. Then they will have to challenge it. Then it will have to be appealed, right, through that whole process. So yeah, just like any law, there's of course a chance that that's going to happen. With any controversial law, there's of course a chance that that's going to happen. But the better that we work within communities and existing community violence intervention programs, the better that implementation can be so that we don't see gaps. Oh, that's kind of a non-answer, I know.
I'm just going to ask 2 of the 100 questions I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
So one question, well, actually, the comment would be that youth is our future. And one of the things I've been concerned about and I've been hearing about is how youth is getting turned off to politics and getting turned off to even the risk of voting. So what I'm wondering about is, to what degree do you and your national organizations work through the communication, social network, media that youth are involved with, which is very different from what adults are involved with? What are you doing to reach out and to make sure that those that represent your values are 100%ers when it comes to voting?
Sure, I'll take this one since I do all of our social media. From my perspective as a young person, I actually see that our generation is the most galvanized to make change through our political system. I think sometimes we're fed that narrative that we're not engaged politically, so we're not engaged politically. Because I think a lot of politicians and a lot of systems of power don't want us to be engaged because they don't like what we have to say, right? And so specifically, social media is a platform that we use, that we try to use very purposefully to engage young people, because it is such a powerful way for young people to get the information that maybe they aren't getting in school, or that they're just not getting, period, right? So it's a way to start conversations. Like I said before, education and starting conversations is one of a very important part of any sort of social organizing and activism, but especially gun violence, because it is such a widespread issue. But it's also an issue that people turn their heads to, right? Like, they don't like to hear about it. So we utilize social media and outreach with other organizations such as March for Our Lives or Detroit Area Youth Uniting Michigan, or other youth-led organizations to really expand each other's networks and expand the educational resources that youth have to get engaged. We've hosted some phone banking and phone banking, and our protests our annual March with Oxford have brought out a lot of young people from across the state. So it's just constantly finding those unique ways to get young people involved to make sure that we all feel engaged and we all feel valued, right? And that's something that young people can do for each other, is value each other's opinions within this political mess that is America right now. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. I'll quickly ask the second question. And what you're doing, and it seems like your strategy, is to really go after things that are feasible. You know, you're clicking off the low-hanging fruit one at a time, things that you really can accomplish. So here's the other part of the question. And again, I'm wondering about your connection, your group's connections with the bigger picture. America has always had an appetite for violence and aggression. It's part of our culture. It's fed to us through TV, through movies, through games, everything. Do you have partners in your effort, or the national effort, to try to target the cultural effect of celebrating violence, whether it's a hockey game or whether it's a show on TV that we all get our hedonistic love of, but it's part of this unconscious okayness with violence in our culture. So I'm just wondering what your group might be doing to target those who are feeding us our culture with this. Well, no, I'm thinking about Hollywood and media and video games and everything we do to normalize violence as a means of solving problems in American culture.
I appreciate the question. I really do. I am going to push back on it a little bit, though. Our Hollywood videos go across the world, right? Our music goes across the world. Video games are not unique to the United States, and they're not new to this generation, right? Video games, computer games have been around for decades. The amount of people that we lose as a result of gun violence is unique to this country. And that's the thing that we have to really, really acknowledge and talk about and not be afraid to talk about, right? And when you're chatting with your uncle at the holidays or your neighbor down the street who is fond of the Second Amendment, that's the thing that we have to agree on first, is that people are losing their lives unnecessarily, gun violence is preventable, and it's unique to the United States, right? But I do agree that those changes to culture are something that we can think about, right? We can demand that as consumers, right? That's the number one answer, right, to pretty much anything in the United States is capitalism, right? That we as consumers can choose to support people, agencies, organizations, movements, right, that are asking for nonviolent solutions to things. In a wider sense, what is our I don't know if our coalition is expressly doing that, beyond the fact that we do have a lot of really important, one of the number one priorities for us moving forward is asking the state for funding for what we call CVIs, Community Violence Intervention Programs. These are the people who are in the streets doing the work day to day, that have been doing this work for decades, that know their communities best, know the ways to reach out to those community members who are influential to young people, and not to try and recreate the wheel with new fundings and new programs and new offices of blah, 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 right? That we need to get the funding from the state into the hands of the people that are already working with their community stakeholders. That's going to be, that's where we have influence, and that's where we have purpose. I think Jada wanted to add something.
Yeah, something else we do, I guess, I haven't thought about it in that way before, but like combat the idea of violence in our culture. A key pillar of the violence in our culture is dehumanization, right? In all forms of social issues, especially gun violence, we dehumanize the issue so much that we don't think about the fact that these are people losing their lives who aren't coming back, right? Who would have had such an enormous impact on this world, who can't, right? And then their impact on their families and their loved ones. And so something we try to do as an organization is humanize the issue, right? Like we tell our stories, we like to share about those lost and other tragedies, as well as talk about those our community loses every day. So that's something I want to point out too, is humanizing the issue, humanizing any issue is such an important step in preventing it as well, because dehumanization and reducing it down to numbers is such a powerful weapon of the gun lobby.
Yeah, when I was in the Army, I had an M16, so I know what it can do, and I know that an AR-15, which is basically the same thing, has no purpose. It's not a hunting gun. It's not a very good gun for sharpshooting, you know. Its only purpose is to kill human beings. Is there any way, are you working on making that kind of weapon illegal in the state? And is there a possibility that it will be?
Yeah, so as we move into like the next session, we're trying to figure out our priorities, and assault weapons ban is definitely one. There used to be an assault weapons ban nationally, but Congress did let it expire. So now we have to kind of work together as states, and then also just pushing nationally for it. So that's a big priority for us. Like you said, it's a gun meant for killing people. So as we move in to talking to more legislators and the next session, we will definitely push for assault weapons bans. That's a big priority.
I would like to add, on the federal level, we do have an assault weapons ban that's, that is trying to be introduced into a committee, but we're not getting very far because we are in partisan gridlock in Washington, D.C. We can't get much done when it comes to gun violence prevention. So like just like what Ms. J said a little bit ago about talking to your family members, getting the conversation going. And I think that's the point I want you all to take away from here, is that we need to start conversations on gun violence. We need to make sure people are aware of the effects of gun violence, the way it shatters communities, and so forth. So I really appreciate you all being here today. It means a lot, and it's truly an honor.
So just apropos of the Second Amendment, they haven't ruled on these things yet, but Scalia, who wrote the ridiculous opinion that said everybody can have a gun, and the words well-regulated apparently don't mean anything in English, or militia, he said you could regulate. And these are regulations that are permitted. We had an assault gun ban for quite a while. So thank you guys so much for your work. I have to say, I have not seen that the youth, and I'm connected through my own children, I have not seen that young people are staying out of the fray. I've seen that they've been throwing themselves into the fray, whether it's about this, or Black Lives Matter, or equal rights for everyone, or whatever it is. And I have to tell you, I've despaired of this issue many times, and this is the first time that I've walked out of anything that I've seen or heard about it and felt like there may be some promise for tomorrow. Yes?
Is the Second Amendment our enemy?
Yes, and that's my opinion. But let's move on. Let's move on. That's just my opinion. Just want to very quickly, Mark Lipton is here. He's got a concert coming up August 13th at 3 p.m. here in this room. The tickets are on sale only at the door. There's been information in the newsletter, and also he brought cards tonight. So it should be a lot of fun. It's the Great American Songbook. Unfortunately, I'll be out of town, but I think it'll be great. All right, and let's conclude.
Behold how good it is when people dwell together, living as one people, hand in hand. What keeps us safe and strong is that we have each other, one unit family across the land. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
Thank you, as always, Joseph, for the beautiful music, to David Weeks for the streaming, Arthur for the slides, and to our wonderful guests. Please join us for our own Shabbat, our reception afterwards.